I am LelItzPanda, a Bedwars leaderboard player and someone who's been playing Bedwars ever since it was first introduced in the prototype lobby on Hypixel in January 2017. And I have built a decent sized audience here on YouTube showcasing my excellent game sense and solid PvP skills. I uploaded my first Bedwars video on February 26, 2017, and little did my 12-year-old self know at the time what Bedwars was going to do to him. Like everyone starting something new, I was not great at Bedwars at the start. At 68 stars, I had 400 wins and a 3 FKDR, a far cry from what my FKDR sits at now. But at the beginning of my Bedwars journey, I was a solo Bedwars main. While yes, I did have my solo queuing for his era, which I'm sure everyone has had, my stats were actually not too bad. At 179 stars, I had 8,530 final kills, 1,091 final deaths, giving me a solid FKDR of 7.81. But besides that, I reached 100 stars in late January 2018. Unfortunately, I do not have the exact date. I reached 200 stars on April 2nd, 2018, and on June 3rd, 2018, I reached 300 stars. And from 300 to 400 stars, I reached many insane milestones. The first being 20,000 final kills, which I achieved on June 20th, 2018, and made me the 65th person to ever reach that. And on July 11th, 2018, I would get onto my first lifetime leaderboard, getting onto the solo final kills leaderboard at 7,269 final kills. Oh, and I forgot to mention, I joined the guild known as No Life around this time. You may or may not have heard of the owner of this guild. His name is GamerBoy80. But anyways, 2 days later, after getting onto my first lifetime leaderboard, I would reach 400 stars, this being on July 13th, 2018. And then I would reach 500 star on August 14th, only taking me 32 days to get 100 stars, which honestly is mad impressive considering that there was only one weekly quest back then compared to the 4 now. But anyways, I would slow down a bit, eventually reaching 600 star on October 18th, 2018. Roughly 2 weeks later, on November 3rd, I would get onto the lifetime final kill leaderboard, reaching it at 39,799 final kills. And then 3 weeks later, I would reach 700 stars. And from 700 to 800 stars, I would become the 4th player to reach 4,000 solo Bedwars wins. And on that same day, I would get onto the lifetime level leaderboard in Bedwars. Now let's see these sunny days turn into rainy days. On Christmas Day 2018, I would reach 800 stars and double prestige with a player you may know, ManholeIQ. Manhole and I would attempt to break the daily doubles wins record on December 29th, 2018. Going into this, Manhole and I were very confident we could break the previous record set by Monster GG and Type 4K at 194 daily doubles wins. And unsurprisingly, me and Manhole slightly broke the record at 205 wins. I also reached 50,000 final kills on that day, but I never took a screenshot of it unfortunately. And just a week later, on January 6th, I would get banned for a year by Watchdog, which would completely ruin my pace for becoming the 5th player to reach 1,000 stars and the 1st player to reach 100,000 final kills, but we'll get back to that later. After waiting out my year ban, I would get knocked from number 8 on the level leaderboard to number 50, and get knocked down from number 4 to number 13 on the final kill leaderboard, and after being unbanned for 2 weeks, I would get back onto the lifetime final kill leaderboard at 55,294 final kills. And I have been on the leaderboard ever since then. Just 5 days later, on January 19, 2020, I would reach 900 stars in Bedwars, and then on May 2nd, 2020, I reached 1,000 stars in Bedwars, becoming the 56th person to reach it. Although technically I would have hit it in sometime March 2019, which would have been top 5 about, if I didn't get banned for a year, but that's besides the point. Shortly after the Force Bedwars tournament of June 2020, I would reach 1,100 star on July 22nd. I would go on a small hiatus, only getting 50 stars in 3 months, but eventually in October 2020, the Prime Prestiges were finally released. Up until this point, after reaching 1,000 stars, you would not receive any new prestige colors. But on October 8th, 2020, brand new prestige colors would be released, offering new prestige colors all the way up to 3,000 stars. When this update released, I was 1157 stars, meaning I would not miss any prestige, although I did not see the prestige message for 1,100 star. And then eventually on November 15th, I would reach 1,200 stars in Bedwars. This would be my last prestige for the year of 2020. So let's see what we know so far. During 2018, I gained roughly 800 stars. In 2020, I gained just over 300, but little did I know 2021 would be my most played year for Bedwars. In January 2021, I would end up reaching 1,300 stars, but the even more impressive achievement this month was the fact that I went from 90,061 final kills to 97,792, making this my most played month ever. I averaged a ridiculous 250 final kills a day during this month. It was actually insane, and shortly after, on February 9th, 2021, I would reach 100,000 final kills at 1,405 star, becoming the lowest star to ever reach it and becoming the 5th person to ever reach it. Remember earlier how I said we would come back to me talking about being the first player to reach 100,000 final kills? Well, technically I was actually the first person to reach it. During my year ban, I grinded my alt account to 50,000 final kills, reaching it in October 2019. So this would give me 100,000 final kills, combining both of my accounts considering my main had 51,000 when I got banned, and the actual first person to reach it was GMMK, who hit it in January 2020, meaning I would have reached it 3 months before him if I didn't get banned for a year. But at the end of the day, it's a what if, so take it with a grain of salt. About a month after reaching 100,000 final kills, Hypixel did a huge update that removed 4v4 wins from the new core mode leaderboards. And because of this update, I was below 100,000 final kills on the leaderboard. So I got the luxury of reaching 100,000 final kills on the leaderboard for a second time on the same account. It was actually super dope. Along with 4v4 being removed, I actually got a spot on the lifetime wins leaderboard. And also during my 1400 star era, I got onto the lifetime team's final kill leaderboard, reaching it at 47,422 final kills, and also climbing up the threes lifetime leaderboard. I was top 5 for both wins and final kills on the threes leaderboard. And soon, I finally reached 1500 stars on March 30th, 2021. Nothing really happened during my 15-star era, so then on May 20th, 2021, I was currently sitting at 36,000 wins and 120,000 final kills, giving me an impressive 75 final kills per star, but soon we will learn these will be the last few months where that stat was relevant. I eventually would hit 1,700 star on July 20th, and then shortly after, I would hit 40,000 overall wins on July 29th, 2021, and then I would take a small 1-month break in August 2021. After this break, I would come back and reach 1,800 star on October 22nd, 2021, then I would reach 1900 star on December 9th, 2021 on an insane 2v33 castle clutch, which you can check out if you would like. And then 4 days later, on December 13th, 2021, I would reach number 1 on the core mode wins leaderboard for Bedwars, making it my first number 1 position for any leaderboard, and that would mark the end of my year for Bedwars in 2021. I would end up getting 19,000 wins, 59,000 final kills, and gaining 700 stars, being my most played Bedwars year by a long shot. Now, let's get into 2022. To start 2022, I had a little burnout, so my 2,000 star prestige didn't come until February 19th, but yeah, like I said, I would reach 2,000 stars on February 19th, becoming the 15th player to do so, having 151,000 final kills and 45,000 wins when reaching 2,000 stars, and this would be my last prestige for quite some time, up until I would reach 2,100 stars on June 3rd. Shortly after, I would start up an insane 3s win streak, but more on that later. I would reach 2,200 stars on September 17th, and just 2 days later, I would reach an insane win streak of 600 in 3v3 Bedwars. This win streak would continue on for another month until I would unfortunately be sniped at a 817 3s win streak, marking this my highest win streak in any mode in my history of playing Bedwars up until this point. But besides that, a month later on November 21st, I would reach 2,300 stars, and that would honestly wrap up the year of 2022. Honestly, a pretty uneventful year when it comes to my Bedwars history. During 2022, Bedwars saw a massive decline in players, going from averaging 20,000 to just 10,000 during that year. But in late 2022, Hypixel said they would be releasing an update in early 2023 that would implement a similar system to Angel's Ascent from Skyward, basically meaning they're adding a long-term progression system to keep veteran players such as myself more engaged in the game, which was a huge boost of motivation at the time for myself and many other OG players. But getting into 2023 now, I would reach 2,400 stars on January 11th, and a month later, I would become the first player to reach 50,000 wins, reaching it on February 6, 2023, and just a month later, I would reach 2,500 star on March 22nd. And honestly, nothing important happened during my 2,500 star era, but I would reach one of the nicest looking prestiges on May 20th, 2023. This prestige being the Nebula prestige, or 2,600 star. Here's an image of the prestige. Let me know what you think about it in the comments. But anyways, during the end of my 2,600 star era, I would have an insane race to reach 100,000 final kills in 3s Bedwars with fellow leaderboard player RRG. When I first started racing him, I was 2,000 final kills behind, but anyways, I would reach 2,700 stars during this race on September 18th, and at 2,712 stars on September 23rd, I would become the first player to reach 100,000 final kills in 3s Bedwars. And then just 2 months later, I would reach 2,800 stars on November 24th. Remember earlier when Hypixel said they were planning on introducing a new update in 2023 that would implement a similar system to Angel's Descent from Skyward? Well, this update would eventually be released in December, which is definitely not early 2023, but it's whatever. This update was a slumber hotel, and it was absolutely horrible. It provided less than 50 hours of new content that just gave you a ton of XP and awful cosmetics. Well, besides one final kill one. So that's it for 2023. Honestly, a pretty solid year. Going into 2024 to start the year, I would reach 2,900 stars on January 11th, and shortly after, Hypixel would completely remove loot chests from Bedwars, which looking back on it now is quite sad. But what can you do? Hypixel doesn't listen to their community, so. Then just a short 2 months later, I would become the 8th player to reach 3,000 stars, and at the same time, my YouTube channel started gaining a lot of traction. More on that later. Then on July 11th, I would reach 3,100 stars. And after becoming number 1 on the wins leaderboard, no one was really close to passing me, but during my 3,100 to 3,200 star era, WarOG was closing the gap fast. At this point, he was only 1,500 wins away from passing me. And at the rate we were both going at, he was gonna pass me by January of 2025. But anyways, I would eventually become the first player to reach 60,000 wins on October 8th, 2024. And then just 1 day later, I would reach 3,200 stars on October 9th. And WarOG was now just 500 wins away from passing. Also, by this point, I got knocked off the level leaderboard by all the ticket machine botters, but anyways, the last major thing to happen to me in 2024 was the fact that my YouTube channel reached 10,000 subscribers on December 13th, which was awesome. As I'm rating this, we have 17,500, so if you've enjoyed this video so far, don't forget to drop a like and subscribe. But that's it for 2024. On to 2025 now. I reached 61,000 wins on January 24th, making it my last win milestone to be number 1 on. And after being number 1 on the wins leaderboard for 3 years and a month, WarOG would pass me on January 27th and it would not look back. It now has a 2,000 win lead on me. And the last thing to happen since that, I got a 450 win streak in 3s after the update that removed dodging, which is honestly still unreal to me. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed my full history of Hypixel Bedwars, and why I honestly think I'm the Bedwars GOAT. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Bye.